What most people never stop to consider is that the connection between desire and biology runs far deeper than anyone typically acknowledges. The idea that women place enormous weight on sexual compatibility with a partner is not some modern cultural preference or passing trend. It is rooted in something far more fundamental, the hardwiring of the human body itself. Research has found that an overwhelming majority of women, close to 97%, view how a man shows up physically in an intimate relationship as something they simply cannot compromise on when choosing someone to build a life with. This is not vanity or superficiality at work. Evolution has quietly embedded physical chemistry into the selection process as a proxy for genetic strength and emotional resonance. When that chemistry is absent, the relationship is essentially standing on a cracked foundation because the biological bedrock that holds everything together was never laid down properly. For the vast majority of women, powerful intimacy is not an added perk on top of a relationship. It is the structural core of it. To truly grasp why this matters so much, you have to step inside what actually unfolds inside a woman's body when genuine arousal takes hold. What happens is nothing short of a complete physiological transformation. The moment authentic desire ignites, the body abandons its resting baseline and shifts into a mode that resembles high-performance output. Core temperature begins climbing noticeably, generating real, measurable heat, not poetic warmth, but a literal thermal spike driven by surging blood circulation and elevated metabolic demand. Every system in the body is actively repositioning itself for what is about to happen. The most striking change, however, plays out inside the cardiovascular system. At the peak of arousal, a woman's heart rate climbs by an average of 60%, a surge that mirrors what the body experiences during a sustained, moderately intense workout. The heart is driving oxygenated blood outward to extremities and inward toward the pelvic region at a dramatically accelerated pace, feeding the sensory nerve endings and amplifying the intensity of every point of contact. This is not a passive mental experience. It is a full-body physiological event that demands real stamina and genuine attunement from a partner. When you truly understand that her body is in the middle of all of this, the heat building, the heart hammering, every sense operating at maximum sensitivity, you begin to understand why the ability to meet and match that energy is so essential. A man who cannot read those biological signals or keep pace with the physical reality unfolding in front of him is not just having an off night. He is revealing a fundamental incompatibility. Recognizing these markers is the starting point for moving past surface-level guesswork and into a real understanding of female desire. When it comes to elevating the physical experience, the most powerful changes often come from the smallest adjustments. The biggest shifts don't require dramatic reinvention. They require paying close attention to the subtle switches embedded in the female nervous system. Something as seemingly simple as eating dark chocolate before an intimate encounter, for instance, is far more than a romantic gesture. It functions as a genuine biological primer. Dark chocolate contains specific compounds, including phenylethylamine and tryptophan, that stimulate the brain's release of dopamine and serotonin. These neurochemicals reduce inhibition, elevate mood, and meaningfully increase physical sensitivity. By introducing these chemical signals into the body ahead of time, you are essentially pre-warming the system for pleasure, making each subsequent touch register with greater intensity before anything has even begun. Once the mental and chemical groundwork is laid, the conversation shifts to physical approach. And this is where a great many men are still relying on assumptions that simply do not hold up. Standard penetration alone is consistently among the least effective routes to a woman's climax. The anatomy makes this clear. The external regions, specifically the labia and the surrounding clitoral network, are home to a far denser concentration of accessible nerve endings than deeper internal areas. Consistent, deliberate, rhythmic stimulation focused on the labia is not a workaround or an alternative. It is following the body's own map directly to the most reliable outcome. When you commit to this kind of targeted external focus, you stop hoping something works and start operating with an understanding of how her body is actually built to respond. This is precisely what distinguishes a partner who is remembered from one who is forgotten. It is the ability to move away from generic one-size-fits-all approaches and treat intimacy as a combination of chemical intelligence and precise physical technique. When those two elements work together, the right chemical preparation followed by the right physical execution, you stop performing by accident and start performing with conviction. You become the kind of partner who understands the machinery well enough to make every encounter feel purposeful, deeply satisfying, and impossible to forget. There is a conversation that is long overdue, and it involves stripping away the layers of confusion that have built up around female anatomy for far too long. Among the most misunderstood and unjustly stigmatized aspects of female pleasure is the release of fluid that some women experience during a climax. Society has historically wrapped this entirely natural event in a shroud of embarrassment and shame, leaving women feeling self-conscious and men feeling bewildered. The truth needs to be stated plainly. When a woman releases fluid during an intense moment of intimacy, it is a healthy, natural, and completely normal physiological response. There is no impurity in it. There is nothing to be hidden or apologized for. It is the body's way of signaling that it has reached a state of profound stimulation and total muscular release. To understand the mechanics behind it, you have to look at the skin's glands, sometimes referred to as the female prostate, which are located in the pelvic region. Under conditions of extreme arousal and intense stimulation, these glands can produce and release fluid as a direct output of the nervous system firing at full intensity. This is not a failure of physical control, it is a sign that every system is working exactly as designed. When a woman feels genuinely safe, at ease, and highly stimulated, her body releases tension in the most complete and physical way it knows how. Accepting this as the straightforward biological event it is, represents a critical step in becoming a truly sophisticated and supportive partner. Viewing these bodily functions through the lens of science rather than outdated social discomfort removes the psychological weight that so often prevents women from reaching their fullest potential in intimacy. Real connection demands a complete rethinking of old assumptions and a genuine embrace of how the human body actually operates. When natural responses are treated as something shameful, what gets created is an atmosphere of inhibition that quietly suffocates desire and corrodes genuine connection. But when a man recognizes that fluid release is simply evidence of a powerful and successful encounter, he creates the conditions for a woman to fully let go and experience pleasure without self-editing. That is the mark of a mature and knowledgeable partner, someone who does not flinch at the body's natural expression, but understands it as confirmation of a deep and authentic physical bond. At its core, moving past these taboos is an act of education and respect. The female body expresses satisfaction in complex and varied ways, and none of those ways should be met with judgment or confusion. When these experiences are spoken about openly and without shame, the power is taken away from embarrassment and returned to the people sharing the connection. The final dimension of mastering desire involves stepping outside the most obvious assumption about where intimacy belongs. Most people default to imagining the bedroom as the natural and only setting for sexual connection. But the actual data points somewhere entirely different. In America, a significant portion of sexual encounters take place inside the vehicles rather than within the walls of a home. This is not a random statistical quirk. It is a meaningful window into what truly accelerates human desire. What it reveals is that spontaneity, the electricity of an unexpected setting, and the momentum of an unplanned moment carry just as much weight in creating a compelling encounter as the physical act itself. The car becomes something like a private mobile space where the ordinary rules and rhythms of daily life temporarily cease to apply. The fact that so many encounters happen there speaks to a deeper psychological truth, that the thrill of being somewhere out of the ordinary is itself one of the most potent catalysts for arousal. If intimacy becomes entirely predictable, locked into the same room at the same time with the same routine, the spark that once felt effortless begins to dim. But when both people remain open to the idea that desire can ignite anywhere, in the back of a car, in a quiet outdoor space, somewhere unplanned and unexpected, the relationship stays alive with a sense of adventure and possibility. Moving beyond the bedroom sends a message that hunger for the other person is not something that gets scheduled or confined to a particular location. It is constant and immediate and capable of erupting at any moment. That environmental unpredictability acts as a natural amplifier of attraction, keeping both partners genuinely curious about what comes next. This is the final layer in understanding the full picture of desire. The brain is wired to crave what is novel, and when the setting changes, the chemistry of the entire encounter shifts with it, making the experience feel fresh, daring, and far more deeply memorable. Becoming a truly unforgettable partner means being willing to leave the comfort zone behind and understand that connection has no fixed address. When a man can fluently speak the language of her body, tap into the chemistry of her triggers, and understand the psychology of environment and novelty, he earns a place in a very rare group, the men who genuinely understand what it means to connect with a woman at the deepest possible level. If what you just heard made you think differently about any of this, pass it on to someone who could use the perspective. The conversation doesn't end here, though. The mechanics of physical attraction are only part of the picture. The hidden psychological forces that drive human behavior go even further, and understanding them changes everything about how you move through the world and the relationships within it.